What's the deal with North Korea? Today on The Realist. Today I want to talk about another topic that is probably one of the most crucial, dangerous, pressing problems in international relations today, and that's North Korea, and specifically how the United States and its allies in the region are going to or have to or can address this issue. For those of you who don't know much about North Korea, Korea has been divided between North and South Korea ever since the end of World War II, and that division was cemented after the end of the Korean War in 1953 when, crucially, only a ceasefire was signed between the United States and South Korea and North Korea, which was backed by Russia and China. Now, North Korea officially is communist. They embrace communist ideology. In practice, North Korea is arguably the most dictatorial, authoritarian state anywhere in the world. Now, because of this, North Korea faces an incredible array of problems. Firstly, by and large, they are completely cut off from the rest of the world, except for China, a little bit of Russia, and a little bit of places like Iran and Pakistan. But for the most part, North Korea is completely isolated from the international realm. Secondly, because of that isolation and because of horrendous governance, bad governance, the country suffers from terrible levels of poverty, famine, disease, crumbling infrastructure, and the list goes on. And this all originates from the bad governance of Korea, and specifically the Kim family. Now, what is the goal of North Korea in international affairs? The goal is simply this: regime survival. The North Koreans, and particularly Kim Jong-un, the new leader who comes from the Kim family, who just assassinated his half-brother, his goal is to maintain his rule, his authoritarian grip, at all costs. What is the number one way in international affairs, ladies and gentlemen? If you're thinking out there, how do I protect my authoritarian regime? Here's what you need to do. Get a nuclear weapon. If you get a nuclear weapon, the ability for outside powers to then invade you and topple you by force is drastically reduced. Why? Because who is going to attack you? Who is going to attack your country if you have weapons of mass destruction? Now, North Korea watches the news. They've seen what happens to regimes like Saddam's Iraq or Gaddafi's Libya when those countries decide to, for whatever reason, not possess nuclear weapons. They become susceptible to force, which is exactly what happens. The United States invaded Iraq, toppled Saddam, NATO toppled Gaddafi. Now, the argument is, had those regimes possessed nuclear weapons, the likelihood of invasion, of toppling their regime, would have shrunk to nearly zero. And the other thing to keep in mind here is that South Korea, and particularly the capital of South Korea, Seoul, is right up on the border of North Korea. So even if the United States decides to attack and thinks that its own population in the continental United States is safe from a nuclear attack, well, Seoul is less than 100 miles from North Korea. It's a city of 10 million people. They are very susceptible to nuclear weapons, and I don't think they would like the United States to just invade, leaving them vulnerable to a nuclear attack. Okay, so what are the options for the United States and its allies then? Very, very bad options. No, this is one of those situations that foreign policy analysts say is a no good situation. All bad situation. The first thing the United States can do is they can attack North Korea's critical infrastructure, their nuclear infrastructure, their launch capabilities, their military capabilities, not an invasion, but just, cruise missile strikes, drone strikes, airplane bombing runs, these types of things. But this is very risky and ineffective for two reasons. The first reason is it's risky because if you do that, you open yourself up and you open South Korea and Japan up to retaliatory attacks by North Korea. The second reason, the reason why it's not effective, is North Korea can just go deeper and deeper underground in developing their nuclear capabilities. So ultimately, unless you're willing to invade and ensure that North Korea, even underground, isn't developing their nuclear weapons, probably not going to be a good option. Plus, you run the risk of a place like Seoul, South Korea being utterly destroyed. The second option is that the United States could try to force China, which has the most leverage over North Korea, to force North Korea to stop its nuclear and ballistic missile testing. The only problem with that is China is much more concerned about the North Korean regime collapsing. Why is this? because China does not want a refugee crisis where you have millions and millions of North Koreans fleeing a failed state into China. If you thought the Syrian refugee issue was a big problem, you ain't seen nothing yet. If North Korea goes down, millions and millions and millions of North Koreans will be fleeing. Most of them will be fleeing towards their friendly neighbor, one of their only friendlies around the world, to the north. China really doesn't want millions of North Koreans flooding into its borders. It's got enough internal problems as it is to have to add on top of that a refugee crisis. Not to mention the second fact that if the Korean Peninsula is united, there could run a risk of that friendly relationship, military relationship between South Korea and the United States perhaps staying and pushing that military alliance all the way up to China's border, something that China is not too keen on. So it's very difficult to get China to use any sort of hard leverage over North Korea, like stopping its coal imports, stopping any food, and trying to put diplomatic pressure on North Korea. Now, China has done these things in the past and recently actually stopped some coal exports into North Korea, but it's very difficult to China to move all the way over the line. And so you'll see this, particularly from the United States perspective, a lot of anger or frustration from the United States towards China, with the accusation being that China is not doing enough to coerce North Korea into ceasing its nuclear and ballistic missile testing and technology advancement. Okay, what's the third option? The United States can invade North Korea, but for all the reasons I mentioned before, namely the threat of nuclear annihilation to the United States, and particularly and specifically to Seoul, and maybe even Japan, probably not a very likely answer. Add to this the fact that the United States has been engaged in continuous war for nearly 16 years in Afghanistan and Iraq, and its military capabilities has suffered as a result. It costs a lot of money, you use up a lot of your armaments, you have a lot of things that need repairing when you wage war for 16 continuous years. Also, you don't have a very high force level. Where are those extra soldiers going to come from? Are you going to reinstitute the draft in the United States to go to war over North Korea? That's not going to be very popular with the people at home. Are you going to take forces of the United States away from really other important strategic areas in the South China Sea, for instance, or maybe in the Baltics to counter the Russian threat, or maybe in North Africa or even the Middle East to fight terrorism? I don't know. I don't know where this is going to come from. The final thing you can do as the United States is you can simply accept that North Korea is now a nuclear power. But this seems really dangerous too. North Korea is not like the Soviet Union or even Pakistan. North Korea, in all of its dealings, they don't seem like a very rational, reasonable type of nuclear state. And more importantly, most importantly, North Korea, if it becomes a bona fide nuclear power, has the capability to proliferate, to take its technology and share it with other state or non-state actors. And so the worry is North Korea, just to spite the West and the United States, could take its wonderful nuclear technology and either develop it or sell it to state or non-state actors, i.e. terrorists and enemies of the United States, to use those organizations, to use those terrorists as indirect, as proxies in a war against the United States, to launch a nuclear weapon or to smuggle some biological or nuclear device into the United States or Europe. That is a huge worry. Now, what's the resolution to this? I have no idea. Zero idea. Much smarter people than this man you see before you now, with one book on North Korea on his bookshelf. I don't have the answers, surprisingly. Now, I just wanted to flag this for you, my viewers, because it's one of the most important flashpoints around the world, like Iran is, or like Kashmir is, that if not handled correctly, could be one of the only remaining issues on the face of the earth that could actually lead to large nations like the US and China going to war. Because one thing could lead to another, one mistake, one misunderstanding could lead to another, and then eventually, all-out war could ensue. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's a very dangerous situation nonetheless. Now you know, now you're more informed. Start talking about this stuff, read up on it. It's very interesting, it's very grave situation, but hey, it's international affairs. It's exciting. I'm bringing it to you guys. What do you think about this issue? Are there any other alternatives that you see to solving this crisis between particularly North Korea and the United States and her allies in the region? Is there anything else the United States could demand of China? Comment below, let me know, share the video, subscribe to the channel, ladies and gentlemen, and remember, today, as every day, reality always trumps ideology.